Hello and welcome to Story Mode. We made it. We're a little late. I just recorded an hour-long thing for schematics, and now we're going to host a podcast. I think I set everything up correctly. All the game and everything. I think the audio's correct. Nothing should be horribly broken. At this point, we've been running this show for over 2 years
now. That scares me.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Definitely does. Because this is episode 23, right? And we took a 1 month hiatus, and we're now at episode 23, which means we have at least started planning this show roughly 2 years ago. Because there was, I think, a period there where we did 2 episodes in 1 month at one point. Schedule and this show are not exactly friends, but I don't know.
Plus the episode 0 that never saw the live day. And
that episode 0 that we cut up into a trailer and then later covered that game anyway.
Yeah, pretty much.
You and me could do a post-mortem on this show at some point.
Yeah.
But anyway, welcome to Story Mode. If you haven't seen this show before, it's pretty simple. It's think of it like a book club. We talk about a game that we played over the last month, as sort of a story discussion thing. We run usually about an hour, sometimes a little bit over, sometimes a little bit less. It's a pretty casual show, and then afterwards we'll go into after hours if you're watching live and not listening to the recorded version of this, where we just kind of shoot the shit for a little bit. So if this is your first time seeing the show, welcome. It's good to see you. And to all my regulars in chat, you guys are awesome. And real quick introductions. LRFLEW, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good. So yes, I'm LRF, LEW, LRFLEW. Most people here just call me Lewis because no one knows how to pronounce my actual username. I'm terrible at these intros.
And Eggman, how you doing today, dude?
I'm doing all right. Turns out releasing products at work takes a lot of time and effort, and I'm tired, but we get it. We got to play a fun game this weekend.
Yeah,
nice, ridiculous game, but.
Okay, so I saw a review for this game right around this time I started playing it because I was looking for a guide, which we'll talk about later. I saw a review which was, this is literally what happens if Paper Mario made love to Psychonauts, and then after that Paper Mario went off and just got an alcohol addiction.
Sticker Star?
Sure. Sure. I never played Sticker Star stuff. But yeah, no, it's like a 2D platformer where everything is made of paper and everything is really trippy and at the same time kind of dystopian and horrible. This game takes a dark turn chapter 1. You come around the corner and there's just a dude about to hang himself. But anyways, so Mr. Lewis here decided to make us play the so-called stick it to the man. So I'm gonna stick it to the man and just say, you explain this, goddamn. It's your fault. Really. You put us here.
So Stick It to the Man follows the main character, Ray, who is a hard hat tester. And by hard hat tester, I mean a guy drops things on his head and he tells them how many stars he sees. And that's how he tests the hard hats. And then when he's walking back home from the job, where he gets hit on the head constantly, he gets hit on the head by a weird thing that fell out of an airplane. Turns out that weird thing was an alien named Ted. And Ted gives him the ability to read people's minds and move things around telekinetically out of a giant arm growing out of his head. I mean, that's a pretty simple way of explaining the game, right?
To kind of set the tone for the game, one of the main mechanics is that when you read people's minds and even just things in the environment turn into stickers, meaning that the title of the game isn't just a play on the common phrase, stick it to the man. It's literally your taking stickers and sticking them to the man who is the antagonist in this game.
Yeah, the name works on so many levels.
It's I want to say great, but I also want to say just the worst.
Well, if you don't like puns, then you might have some issues with this game, because this game kind of revels in that kind of humor.
I just sigh heavily when I hear puns. Some of them were pretty good, though.
I just wish that I didn't spend so much time playing Silver Surfer for the NES. Now that I think about it, maybe I'm happy that I spent so much time playing Silver Surfer for the NES. That game was tight.
I wonder if that guy who was talking about Silver Surfer for the NES got a nickel every time he said Silver Surfer for the NES.
Someone really
I
likes
don't know.
Silver Surfer for the NES.
We should. This is kind of like an inside joke, but one of the guys in the game, as you're reading his mind, he repeatedly says Silver Surfer for the NES, and it sounds so strange. We should talk a little bit more about
Well, it sounds strange because the context of it was a mafia boss was trying to win a dance competition. He was his biggest rival, so he had his goons lock him up inside of a trunk. So when you're reading his mind inside of the
bury
trunk,
him alive too.
he's like, yeah, can bury him alive. It's like, oh, my only regret is I didn't finish, Silver Surfer for the NES.
I feel like, is that game infamous for anything? Because I feel like it might be an inside
Difficult,
joke.
very difficult.
Okay.
Yeah, it's. I would put it on par with like Battletoads.
Okay.
For just like stupid, unfair, dumb difficulty for no reason.
Yep.
Okay, so the basic goal of this game is to figure out why you got the arm in your head and to, I don't know, try to get rid of it. I don't know, your character's just kind of bumbling about and you're like, oh, I'm gonna go home and tell my girlfriend that I got this arm in my head and I can read her mind. And then the next day you wake up and I don't even remember what happens after that.
It's just a goddamn blur.
Basically, okay.
Well, you're talking about after he finally gets back to his apartment?
Yeah,
After
the next morning he goes to try to see a psychiatrist, and that kind of leads to the whole rest of the plot.
Yeah, Dr. Brahm.
He actually first wants to go see Dr. Egglesworth, and Dr. Egglesworth is seeing Dr. Brahm, and so you have to solve their argument before you can. Well, Arlene.
Okay, let me just explain the gameplay of this game for a second here.
Yeah.
So you get plopped into kind of an open area. It's a 2D platformer, if we didn't mention that yet. We cover a lot of these, apparently. So you get plopped into this wide open area, and you kind of run around this open space. Now, you run around and, as we mentioned before, collect stickers. Now, the way you collect stickers is you have this giant hand sticking out of your head. I realize this might sound weird out of context, but just work with me.
It sounds weird in context, so don't worry.
As you run past people in the background, NPCs, they have little brains. You can see their brain pounding in their head. You then reach into their brain and pull out their thoughts. When you pull out their thoughts, it goes into a sort of a mini cutscene, and they give you a little blurb about what they're thinking. And then if it's a correct thought, you can either get a sticker from it, or you have to insert something into that thought. So think of it like Inception, if you've seen Inception, because that is super simple and an easy thing to describe with. You need...
Well, there's also things you can do in the real world. So one example is you have to figure out someone's sad thoughts. So you get the tears, and you put that tears into a soup, so that the guy making the soup pulls out the human arm. Then you take the human arm and then put it onto a chicken, so an alligator comes out of the sewer. And
then you take the alligator's teeth, and then you put the teeth into the dog, so that the dog can chase away the mafia guys, so that you can get the guy out of the trunk, so that you can put the hole on the trunk that you pulled out of the house earlier on, because apparently there was a hole in that house. I actually can't remember how I got that hole, but there's just like, it's a hole, and then you put that on the trunk, and then the guy can get out of the trunk, and then you take him back to the dance competition, and he can compete with the mafia boss and beat the mafia boss, and then the mafia boss spits out his teeth, and then you take the teeth to the guy who was hanging himself originally because he was sad because his lady friend dumped him for the guy with the nice teeth who happened to be the mafia boss, and then you take the mafia... Like, then the guy goes back, and like the mafia boss leaves because he's upset, and then the guy with the teeth talks to the lady, or the guy who got his teeth replaced because he took the teeth from the mafia boss and put it into the other guy. He talks to the lady because his teeth are nice now, and she's happy, and then they go off and they live happily ever after. Also, he gives you a ride home.
Yep.
So that's one chapter of this video game.
If you want an idea of how absurd this game can get, that's a pretty good example, because that's the chain of thought you have to beat a level. This is very much a point-and-click adventure. I mean, it looks kind of...
I hate this game.
Yeah. it's sort of a 2.5-dimensional point and click adventure. Like, that's kind of what we're dealing with here.
Yeah. So I'll give a few thoughts that I
I
had.
need to stop reading chat. This is bad.
I'll give a few thoughts that I had as I was playing through the game. So one of the main like platforming elements is that you have to get past these guards by reading their minds, and occasionally you can pull out some Z's to put one to sleep, or you can pull out, or later in the game you can pull out your face to slap onto one of the other guards so that they'll chase each other around thinking it's you. I was wondering if there was going to be more methods of fooling around with the guards, although I don't think the puzzles were exceptionally well designed, because for a number of them you could just kind of to move between areas, there's these little thumbtacks, and you like reach out your hand and grab onto them to like zoom across the map faster. And you could like occasionally just alert all the guards and then kind of like ball them up into one area and then just like jump around and avoid them. Or you could like use the thumbtacks to just avoid the whole puzzle part and trying to read the minds. But the puzzles were difficult also because to read the mind, you had to stop, stay in place, click to read the mind, and then read the mind, and then you have to click to get out, unless you want to listen to the whole thing, which would take forever. But the guards are still moving at that point, so you could get caught while you're still reading somebody's mind and not really know it. And that made that part of the game more complicated than I think it needed to be.
Yeah, I mean, part of kind of how that part of the game works is that when you get these puzzles and there's these agents that are trying to hunt you down, you basically have to find safe spots because they have patrol patterns and it's all about line of sight. So if you can find a corner where you don't have no one can actually see you, you can just hang out there and read minds to try to get those items and plan your attack. The problem is by the time you hit the last chapter of the game, those patterns, those spots tend to be very non-obvious. And it's very easy to keep dying over and over as you keep trying to figure out where you're safe to just stand.
Just to make it clear, there is no way to actually do combat in this game. You have to compete with your mind powers. So I'm not sure if Eggman mentioned it, but the way there are these guards that just kind of exist in like these kind of small areas of each level. So let's just say a level is a box, right? There would be a thing in the middle where there's like 4 guards. And there's thoughts down here that you need to get, and then there's thoughts up in the top right, and then there's thoughts in the top left. You have to run through that area with the guards multiple times to deliver the thoughts to the different areas and figure out what stickers need to go where, right?
Well, most of the time you only have to do it once because there's usually a fast travel tube that is unlocked at the end of each one.
Yeah, if you know where you're going, you can manage to do each of those only once. But there's a lot of like little things, like there's a couple of thumbtacks that you have to walk to first to enable them. Those are generally ways to get past them without having to redo the whole section. There's the fast travel pipes. It just kind of depends.
Yeah. And so the reason that these guards are here is because they work for the man, and he is...
And his name is the Man, by the way. Like,
yes.
We're not just forgetting his name. He's literally called the Man.
Yeah, and so he's trying to get the alien brain parasite out of your mind so he can use it to destroy the world, basically.
Yep.
Typical Thursday afternoon stuff.
This is very... I would describe this game as very Adult Swim.
Yeah,
like it's not quite like, Saturday afternoon cartoon. It's more...
It's not quite as crude as Adult Swim, but it has a lot of the same style of humor.
Yeah, if Adult Swim was producing Stick It to the Man, there would be a lot more gore and a lot more poop humor. But like that's basically all it's missing.
It's sort of a PG-13 version of an Adult Swim show.
Yeah.
There's so much poop humor in this game already, though.
Have you ever watched an Adult Swim show?
No.
Exactly.
I don't watch Adult Swim.
They currently have a piece of programming which has a talking vagina. Anyway, moving on.
One of the points that I wanted to bring up with respect to that was the fact that you see the guards, occasionally you're like in your own mind and doing jumping puzzles and stuff like that.
There's a couple of dream sequences.
Yeah, but the guards appear in there, which bothered me to some extent because it felt like the guards should only be in the real world, and they should have thought of other dangers for the mind sequences.
Giant purple blob.
Maybe. And for the record, they kind of did that, but only for one level. In the asylum level, which, by the way, you get committed to an insane asylum at one point because
it's a video game.
Obviously. And all of the guards were replaced by nurses in that one level, but everywhere else they appear as guards. And I can definitely see that. But there's 3 dream sequences, and the third one is sort of a nightmare sequence where it's basically just a Indiana Jones themed chase sequence.
There is actually another guard theme. When you're in space in the end, they have spacesuits on, but go on.
Well, yes, but they're still effectively the guards at that point. But that third one is a chase sequence, and it makes sense because it's symbolizing, his fears being chased by these men. So it makes sense that it was the agents at that point. There were no agents in the first one. So the only one that doesn't make a lot of sense is that middle one, where they're going through that amusement park through his past memories, where the guards feel out of place.
We should also mention, in addition to the unskippable cutscenes that you get during important parts of the plot, there's when you read the minds, you can also, I don't know what button it is on keyboard, but you can press left on your mind reading thumbstick or press right, and it will speed up the text. And the delivery,
I think it's just a WASD or keyboard arrows on the keyboard.
And a lot of the text is delivered like, it's all very like silly, funny sounding, cartoony voices for most of the characters. And it's delivered very slowly. And it was too slow for me at sometimes. But at that point, I'm like holding right all the time on my thumbstick and speeding it up, which literally just speeds up the audio. And it's like that super high pitched squealy audio that you get when you play a record at 5x speed, basically.
Or fast forward a VHS.
And they don't do any normalization to change the pitch back down to what the normal human pitch would be, which makes it exceptionally annoying to listen to, and that really bothered me. And it
Well, I mean, for the record, if you're trying to speed through the text that much, you can just skip dialogue and still get the effects of reading it. So if you are trying to do the guard puzzles, if you read their mind and then immediately back out, you can still get the sticker. So,
but yeah, I was trying to figure out the story for what semblance of a story there was, basically what you were trying to do, because you do need to know what they're trying to say, because it often gives you hints about what you're trying to put together to activate the mind control machine or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, half of the writing is to help lead you in the right direction, and the other half is because it's funny. Blind had mentioned the hole, which literally looks like the top of a can. And, he's talking about, I have a hole in my pocket. If you want to have a hole in something and make a mockery of physics at the same time, then this is for you.
See, I thought that I had to cut the back, the trunk open with that. That was my thought process, was oh, I'm going to go cut something with this can. So I'm going to go cut this trunk. Oh, okay.
That's honestly what stumped me for most of the puzzles. It was just I wasn't thinking stupid enough.
This game has a little bit of a classic term called moon logic, which is Moon was a video game designer back in the day. It was a portion of his last name. I can't remember his full name, but he worked on a lot of classic Sierra titles, and it's the traditional, and I want to say he also worked on one or two of the LucasArts titles as well. But anyways, one of his puzzles is famous for, oh, well, obviously you have to use the stuffing to destroy the machine. Or well, obviously you have to put this thing on that thing, or obviously you have to put that thing on this thing. Two completely non-sequential objects is you put those two together and then the thing happens the way it's supposed to. It's that's not how anything works, but
it's kind of like
It has classic point-and-click adventure logic. That's the easiest way to
That's
explain it.
not a positive thing in my mind, but anyway,
Yeah.
I don't like that.
It reminds me somewhat of the other point and click adventure that we did that had the time travel element. I can't remember the name of it right now.
The one I keep confusing for the Double Fine game. Yeah, the Silent Age, I think is
The
it's
Silent
called.
Age, right? And like there was a puzzle in there where there was something locked in a cage and you needed to get the key, but at that point you had an axe, and I'm like, use the axe on the lock. It's like, nah, don't do that. This should obviously work. I can just smash the lock. Come on. But I guess this game wasn't so much like that, in that most of the time the objects were pretty obvious and they literally like had circles over the things that you were supposed to use them with. So like you'd pick up, there was a bunch of different mouths in the game.
Yeah.
And like you would put them on people's lips, obviously, but you'd also put them on things like loudspeakers. You put an unborn baby's lips on a loudspeaker in this game
Make it go
to get a guy who's building a
just setting
nuclear
a
war
alarm
missile.
A
off.
radiation alert! Every man for himself!
Oh my god. Like the things that you say about this game make you sound like a crazy person. This is what the goal of the game was. To get us all committed.
You take the pregnant belly of a woman and you slap it onto the man that had made her pregnant, and then you read the thoughts of the unborn baby who's upset that the womb is now worse, and you get the screaming mouth from the baby from its thoughts. Like, yeah, no, you sound ridiculous if you try to explain the puzzles in this game.
I'd like to give an example.
Anyway. That will play real well on the audio version. Anyway, I'd
like to give an example of the type of humor that just made me stop, and I was just like, I stopped for legitimately like 3 minutes at this line, and I was like, first of all, I shouldn't be laughing, and second of all, what the fuck am I playing? There was a
Hang
part.
on, let me get my notes. I actually made notes this time. Just continue.
Yeah, so there's a part where you're exploring some of your childhood memories, and one of them is a memory where you're sitting with your father at his work, and he gets a hammer dropped on his head. And so you read his thoughts beforehand, and then you read his thoughts afterwards, and it's like,
Oh, no.
he's talking. His first thought is basically the Pythagorean theorem. He states the Pythagorean theorem.
Yeah, which I think is a Wizard of Oz reference, but yeah.
Yep. And then afterwards, the thought is, and I quote, "I like to make a poopy." I just sat there and was like, I guess I'm playing this game.
Oh, I thought maybe you were going to comment about the thoughts of the guy who dropped the hammer on his head, which he was basically like, maybe if I just convinced him the hammer fell from the sky, well, that will be easier now.
So I'm gonna real quick read my notes. I don't have a lot of them. So why does she hate grapes? Question mark.
Oh yeah.
He loves hard hats. It's not just a job. And then I love the bullshit the agents say. And then the shrink is a bit of a dick. And then seems like an effective asylum. Is she trying to make a cat Frankenstein? The guy like shock therapy. Burning guy again. I feel bad for the doctor's son. Who the fuck is Ted? Dr. Crank Bob from the dance party at the beginning. So Dr. Crank, who is also like was the mafia boss, anyways. And then the doctor's son, and then rip that bunny. Whale? What the fuck? And then do I travel in trash bins? And then whale, even more question marks. And then this game is weird. Rip Donna. It's always the goddamn horse head. This game is really weird. What the fuck's with these movie references? This movie is really weird. Is that a brain flick? This movie is really weird. Zombies. I give up. I'm not taking any more notes.
This stream of consciousness brought to you by Blind's Brain.
That's just...
So there are some games that I decide I'm gonna play on my stream for story mode. I usually play the first 5 or 10 minutes, and if I find myself insanely frustrated in the first 20 minutes, I'm not going to stream it because I'm going to use a guide. And this was one of those games. That's why I didn't stream it. I'll be honest, about 80% of this game I played with a guide. I basically beat that first level, and it took me like 2 hours. And then I beat the rest of the game in 2 hours with a guide.
Yeah, pretty much.
I
didn't have that much trouble, but there were some parts which are frustrating. The one that I'll point out is that there's a mechanic that's used nowhere else in the game when you're in the insane asylum, is that when you have one of your thought bubbles holding one of your objects, there are 2 different objects and people will follow you around. And I couldn't figure out what those people were for, and you had to like lead them halfway across the map to a certain area, and I didn't know that I was supposed to do that, so I had to look that up.
Also,
for the record, you don't need to lead the second one. You can just place the item where it's supposed to be, and it skips to the cutscene. But he will follow you around if you're holding it out.
I think I can do a synopsis of this game. Like a brief synopsis, just to give you guys an idea of the Saturday morning cartoon nature of this game. Or at least like late night Adult Swim bullshit cartoon of the nature of this game. So you're a dude, and we mentioned earlier that a thing falls out of the sky that came out of an airplane, and it hits you in the head. Your profession is hard hat tester, where they drop things on your head. You go see your lady friend, and she tells you, well, go see my therapist, because you think that there's hands coming out of your head, and there clearly isn't, because she can't see them. You go see your therapist. He takes you into a dream state, where he tries to expose your darkest secrets, which you clearly don't have. And then you come out the other side, you wake up, and he says that you're insane. You go to an insane asylum. You spend a bit at the insane asylum. After that, things get a little fuzzy.
What happens is the man who wants the thing in your head
captures you,
decides to release a fake news report that you're a deranged madman who killed his girlfriend, and so you try to go to find your girlfriend.
Yeah, and then
while
you get
the police helicopters are looking
dude.
for you.
Yeah, and then you get captured by the baddie, the man. And then you end up in his space station that's run by his mom, who's the AI.
Well, before that, you end up in basically Area 51.
Yeah.
Because you find not one, but 2 Elvises, as well as Santa Claus, because why not?
Yeah. You go through that whole thing. I was just gonna skip that because it's not sequential. But
it has some of the silliest sequences in the game, though. Like,
okay. So you end up in the kind of underground bunker Area 51 thing, and then you get launched into space. At which point you basically pull his hideout apart from the inside out. End up floating around in space at one point for like maybe 20 minutes with no oxygen until you get rescued. And then he eventually pisses off his mom, and then she self-destructs the space station, and then you go home.
Yeah. Oh, it's worth clarifying. The man's mom was downloaded to the ship's mainframe.
Yeah.
So it is, and also the ship is like shaped like the man's mother, so it's the mothership.
It's the dense.
Yeah.
The look on Eggman's face is kind of that's right. He's just got like this blank
1,000-yard stare.
But yeah, you end up getting the man and his mother pissed off at each other. So the mother is just like, you know what? I'm just going to self-destruct the entire ship.
So I have an honest question. Why did you want to talk about this game?
Because I thought it was funny.
Okay.
Like, I mentioned this game because we were talking about the previous episode we did on jazz punk. And I mentioned that this one was a game with a similar sense of humor, basically.
I'm glad we did this game because it's very different than the other types of games we do, which are more serious, whether they be have like a happy ending or a sad ending. This one's just kind of
tragic, political.
Goes off.
We normally do.
Yeah. I wrote down at one point my notes were basically just a brain dump because I didn't really have anything interesting intellectual to write down.
Yeah. It's sort of like blinds.
This game is maybe the stupidest game that I've ever played, but it is making me
No.
laugh.
The stupidest game I ever played was Poke the Puppy.
Poke the puppy.
It was a flash game on Addicting Games. You poke the puppy, and there's
That is-
there's a 1 in 100 chance that the puppy turns around and bites you, and you have to see how many times you can poke the puppy before the puppy turns around and bites you.
The only game I can think of from kind of that Newgrounds era involving a puppy is Don't Shoot the Puppy, but
Yeah,
you know.
there's also that one, but yeah, I like Don't Poke the Puppy.
Yep.
I just
Anyways.
I think it is trying to. It is kind of interesting actually if you do look at it from a like a story perspective, because the first area kind of deals with depression and self-worth. Like each area does kind of have its own enclosed thought that it's trying to look at. The opening
That sort of theme.
Yeah, the opening area is, like the first character you meet in that area, who I mentioned earlier in my like high speed spiel, was like he has messed up teeth, and his girlfriend broke up with him because he had messed up teeth and left him for the mafia boss because the mafia boss had beautiful teeth, which you later steal and give to the guy with the messed up teeth. And he's a taxi driver, and he's about to hang himself. And literally the first thing he says to you is, "Hey, can you like turn off the brakes so like the car will roll forward so that I
No, I think technically what he says was, "I didn't really think this through. Can you release the brake for me? Thank you."
Basically, that's what he says, and he's just like sitting there, like hanging from a lamp, like a light post in the street, just like rope around his neck, just like kind of slouched over and like upset looking, and like just kind of wants you to kill him, and like that sets the tone for that entire area. So that entire area, you're like trying to, I guess, indirectly fix this dude's relationship in this messed up world to make him feel better about himself so that he can go and fix that relationship, which is flawed because like later when you're in his taxi and he's driving you home, you get out of the car, and then him and his significant other drive off, and he goes, "I love you," and she goes, "Pretty teeth." So like, she's about as shallow as a half an inch deep pool. But
there's a lot of couples you end up basically either pairing or bringing back together in this game, because you have the cab driver and the girl obsessed with teeth. You have the guy who is in the mafia boss's trunk. You have the guy with this alligator.
Yep. The alligator guy one because he like saves the alligator from the or pulls the alligator out of the sewer, and then like he's like covered in cuts and he's missing both of his hands and just has hooks and like big ass scars, and he's all taped up, and he says basically something along the lines of, our family will be so happy to see us. Of course that they will greet us with screams and fear, but it's okay, that's just their way. It's like, you bitey Mr. Alligator, you understand me. You don't mind that I sat down in a sewer for the entire day.
Yeah. And you have the Area 51 area. You have the woman that you hook up with the zombie. You have the Yeti that you hook up with the guard. You have the Loch Ness monster you hook up with the bagpipes guy.
Yup.
What else do you have? There's a lot of these in the game.
The one that really...
the spider lady in the insane asylum with the other guard.
I thought she ate him.
Maybe. I don't know. You did put a fly's face on the guard, and the woman thought she was a spider, so who knows?
She said, "At last, the perfect bait," I think. And then
I think she said mate. Perfect mate. But
oh, really? I thought
if you read her thoughts, she is all over the place, though.
She just comes down from the ceiling and like grabs him and like pulls him straight up.
Yeah. If you read her thoughts in her own cell, she's climbing along a makeshift web made out of bed sheets, and she's
special. She's got baggage. We'll go with that.
I thought this was kind of interesting. I only found one instance of this, but there was one instance where the thoughts changed every time you read them, regardless of what else had happened. There was a bomb down in I don't know, there's a bomb somewhere.
In
And
the Area 51 thing.
because you can also read the thoughts of robots, because why not?
Yeah,
Why not?
their brains look funny. They're like a bunch of little tubes. Most of the brains, like they look like a
Capacitors,
brain,
yeah.
but theirs are just like, yeah, it's a bunch of, it's like a circuit board.
Yeah, and so you read its brain, and it's like it gives you a series of errors: error 1000, error 2000, error 3000, error 4000, error 5000, and that goes back to 1. I thought that was kind of interesting. I think that would have been interesting if the game had been built a different way, but because there's so much other important information that's contained in the thoughts of the people that you're reading the minds of, it would dilute the experience quite a bit. Or maybe, and you'd lose out on a lot of the jokes that they built into the game, but maybe there is a range of different thoughts that convey the same information that you need. Would that, I don't know how that would change the game, but
Maybe. I mean, you can also, if you do the item selector and you just hold it on a specific item, Ray will give us a short spiel about it, and
Wait, really?
those sometimes give you hints as well.
No, I never noticed that.
They also give you some pretty funny jokes, like when you get the sticker from the pyromancer guy, he's like, "Okay, I have fire in my pocket." The game's weird.
I'm on fire. Anyways,
did you guys have problems with the credits?
credits?
Like, what kind of
Could you
problems?
read the credits?
No.
Maybe.
I said, could you, not did you?
Oh,
Oh, no. No. I kind of
couldn't?
like all tabbed out at that point. I was like, okay, we're done.
Oh, but
the credits
I'm
work for
saying
me.
that they
That's what
were
you're saying.
physically not readable.
I-
I wonder if I still have it in my. I took an image of it. I don't know if I actually still have it, but I'll see if I can pull it up here.
This game is not particularly bug free. I know Blind sent a screenshot of the game crashing.
It crashed like 6 times in a row, and then I got into the game itself and like touched an enemy, and it crashed again. I restarted my computer, and it was fine. Didn't crash
Yeah.
again, so I was like, I don't know.
And I had the issue where basically anytime I tried to read someone's mind, the audio would blip like a few seconds in.
I got that a couple times, but actually, now that I think about it, I played for a period yesterday and then another period today, and I didn't hear it at all today, but I heard it yesterday.
Yeah. So this game is not entirely bug free, but it's largely playable at least. You're not going to see too many game breaking glitches or crashes for the most part.
Yeah.
Where were we? I was trying to like dissect every area from beginning to end. We did the first area.
Yeah.
The
dude-
second area
Technically
was
the
just-
third, because you first start with the scene where you get hit on the
Oh.
head, and then you have the dream sequence, and then you get to the cab scene.
Yeah, but those first few areas, like,
they're
I-
kind of half tutorial.
yeah,
and
the game
half
doesn't
just
really
exposition.
get going until after that, sort of. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but
Gamma 3, I thought you said your name was Jimmy.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's a scene in the very beginning, and it's, you know what? I'm not even gonna. If you play the game, you'll understand. It's pretty
Yeah.
cheap every time it goes on sale, so it's like, I got it for like $4.
I got it in a Humble Bundle, actually.
So you
Oh.
you didn't pay for it then. I mean,
Yeah, technically. I mean,
directly.
they got money from that.
yeah, but like barely anything. Yeah.
I'm trying to think what scenes we kind of glanced over.
Trying to think what
Um,
scenes like have like kind of an interesting commentary, if nothing else. There would like
Well, the entire thing with Dr. Brahm, because like one of the first scenes you see him in is he's talking to the other doctor, and he's talking about his story, and he's just like, how does that make you feel? Like literally to everything. And you read his thoughts, and he's
And
like,
he's like,
my
"This-
job became a whole
yeah."
lot easier when I realized I could just say, how do you feel to everything?
Yep.
And
One of the things that I thought was both hilarious and just made absolutely no sense was the fact that
this game.
this game, but the reason that Ray got together with his girlfriend Arlene was because she had to give him CPR
And mouth to mouth, yeah.
and mouth to mouth because he had an emergency grape that he carried around in his pocket for a long time. And so he tried to catch the grape in his mouth after he threw it up in the air and ended up choking on it. But he also said the grape was amazing, even though he carried it around in his pocket for weeks, apparently. And I also would like to point out that in his thoughts while he's being administered CPR by Arlene, he says, proper CPR requires breaking ribs or something like that, which I thought was particularly funny because last
That's
episode,
correct.
Coma,
Yep.
they were just like they were doing something. They were pushing the wrong part of the body, or I can't remember.
Yeah, they're pushing on the wrong side of the body. They're pushing like way too high. They were doing it all sorts.
And then
of
she
wrong.
got up and walked around after that because CPR.
Yeah.
And so CPR.
But I mean, to be fair, Ray did too, but he's also a two-dimensional character, so
He's made of paper, so that's fine.
Yeah.
he can survive in space for like 20 minutes. It's fine.
Also, no comments on the actual animation for the CPR, but like at least the verbiage around the CPR happening made it sound like it was sort of okay. Also, we talked about Tacoma, so you should listen to that episode as well.
That was
Yeah.
a good episode,
I like that
Yeah.
episode.
as opposed to this one, which we're all insane now. We've lost our minds.
Yeah. You're crazy.
We've actually managed to do like 2 kind of not Dire Straits depression games in a row.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah. I need to find something really dark for Christmas.
Oh no.
I guess
We should just like do
Wow,
Halloween a
lot.
month late.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot else to say about this game. If the description of what you do to complete your task hasn't enticed you, I don't know what will for this game.
I mean,
There's the doctor who was seeing the psychiatrist. He was in there because he never reconciled with his father, who was a lobotomist, and you end up talking to his father as a ghost. And yeah, he basically talks about how lobotomies are the only cure for like everything.
the only way to fix mental problems is to pull that part of your brain out.
Yeah.
I think that each area is trying to say a small message. The problem is like trying to dissect them, you know.
Yeah.
On a more serious note, like there are some portions of this game where it's like, oh, like they're actually trying to say something with like this little 3-second story that you get, you know, like the whole thing with the sergeant and a little bit of like a sexual harassment commentary there from a couple years ago. Like the bad guy in the relationship with his mother. Trying to think what else really stuck.
I mean, I think there is a lot of commentary, but a lot of it gets kind of muddled or confused, or at least hard to convey when it's combined with the mechanics. So, for example, that doctor and his father, you know, trying to reconcile their differences of one wanting to do lobotomies and the other one not. You solve that solution by solving a solution between a clown father and his clown son, who's afraid of heights, and them trying to reconcile their issues. And then you finally get them to reconcile. You take the appreciative smile from the father clown, and you literally tear it off his face so you can throw it onto the ghost father's mouth. It kind of muddles any sort of message that would be there, even if it still is. It's just confused and hard to explain.
I wouldn't necessarily say that the message isn't there anymore. I think it's like, I still see what they're trying to say with this sequence, but you messing with the sequence is what makes the game mechanically interesting, I guess. So you feel like you have an effect on that story?
Yeah,
Or
but it
on
makes it
those
harder
characters?
to then interpret, in a sense.
I kind of had the same ideas as Lewis, and I couldn't really articulate them in my mind. I think that part of the reason, like when you brought up that, I was like, oh yeah, the first section does kind of make sense as a sort of evaluation of self-worth.
Yeah.
and what that means. But all the messages are so muddled in this very lighthearted and convoluted storyline that they don't come across very well.
I
And
think
I don't think that they're really meant to be focused on. I think this game is just meant to be enjoyable and have some little cute puzzles in it.
Yeah, like the morals are the framework for the jokes instead of the other way around.
yeah, sure, but like in my opinion, when you're taking a serious topic, a really easy way to discuss it is to throw paint all over it. So the topic's still there, you can still see it, but it's just covered in something that's light and fluffy, which is kind of what this game does. It takes a serious kind of dark idea and covers it in fluff and then cuts it up into like 15 pieces. So you still have that idea there. And if you play through the area, you'll get what they're trying to say. But when you come out the other side, it isn't like as I think it isn't as hard to like digest as it would be otherwise. You know, like here
I actually don't really identify with the idea that adding the paint, as you say it, the fluff, makes the ideas easier to digest. I think it just diminishes the worth of the ideas, because a lot of the ideas that we've expressed here do have a lot of like good discussion to be had around them, but in this context I don't think it really works. And it's a personal preference for me, but that kind of fluff is one of my least favorite ways to tackle serious issues like this. If you're trying to address them in a way that the viewer is meant to identify with.
I mean, a lot of portions of this game, from like at least my experience with it when I played it, the way I took it was it talks a lot about mental illness and I think growing up. Like for example, like the bad dude at the end still lives with his mom, you know.
And then, I mean, there's a whole
he
sequence
gets
about that where you're going through his past memories and you try to look at his first almost kiss and
well, to be specific, his mom is showing baby pictures to the protagonist's girlfriend, because she's tied up, and
the man had a terrible prom.
and so she's just going through like all of his like past memories, and he's sitting there going, "Mom, stop!" essentially, and then eventually gets into a fight. Like, you know, like that area in my mind, I took it to mean like, you know, value your family, value your parents. Yeah, they can be annoying sometimes, but like they're all you got in a way. You know, the area in the asylum to me kind of dealt with a little bit of mental illness. The underground area, as I mentioned earlier, like the area 51-ish area, hit a few things, like the area that I mentioned with a little bit of sexual harassment. That might have just kicked in more because of the news recently, but you know. And then like there was definitely like kind of a through line of here is like kind of the issues we're trying to lightly touch on in a very kind of fluffy way. Whether they succeed in it or not, I think that's what they're trying to do with Stick It to the Man.
Maybe. I mean, I definitely understand the idea of trying to use humor to better cover more intense topics. I mean, one of my favorite films of all time is Life is Beautiful, and it's literally that. But probably the problem this game has is it's a sort of do you want coffee with your cream situation, that there's so much humor that it overshadows whatever message or meaning was really meant to be there, if it was intentional, because I think it may have also just been a structure for the jokes.
I mean, even if you look at somebody like Tim Burton, he takes a very dark thought and throws a very light, like, we'll take puppets or claymation or something that's very easy to digest, and then talk about that dark thought using
I'm gonna stop you there, because I think that that's just a medium. It doesn't matter what, like, claymation doesn't mean that it's meant to be lighthearted.
Well,
animation doesn't mean that it's meant to be lighthearted. In fact, the color palette in general of Tim Burton's movie is very dark, and I think
I was gonna mention the writing, but go on.
I mean, the writing is important. Yeah, so it's just I don't I really don't think that the things that are here are meant to be focused on at all. They're just jokes. Because when you have a person's making quotes like "I like to make a poopy," I can't take you seriously at all. I can't.
That is fair. That's totally fair, dude.
Yeah.
Like I get that. But I can't remember who said it. I think it might have actually been Robin Williams. But there's a relatively well-known quote from a comedian. As I said, I unfortunately can't. I don't know the quote on hand, but it was something along the lines of the easiest way to talk about something serious is to make fun of it. So, you know, I mean, hell, look at movies like Life of Brian, you know, or to a lesser extent, something like Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Yeah. I agree that it makes it easier, but I don't think it makes it more worthwhile.
No, absolutely. Like, I'm not saying that they succeeded in any of this. In fact, in some cases, I think they don't. I think that Stick It to the Man is a very funny, slapsticky kind of... Man, that was a bad pun. Slapsticky, like, silly, like, 2D mind-reading brain slug fest that...
That's like the perfect...
I think is trying... I think it's trying to have a serious undertone to it. And I'm not saying I think it succeeded. I just said, we're a podcast where we talk about what we think a game is trying to say and story. And this game doesn't have a huge amount of story, so I'm trying to get what I can out of it for the content of the show.
Certainly. And I mean, if
maybe
I were
I'm totally
to raise
wrong, that would be fine.
To make a discussion, a counterexample to that idea is actually a very small joke in the course of the game. But in one of the early sequences, you end up basically passing through a carnival. And, there's a whole major point there with the medium who conjures ghosts and yada, yada, yada. But just next to it is a lady who's selling balloons. And if you listen to her dialogue, she's basically like, I took some of the Earth's limited supply of helium and stuffed them into disposable, leaky pieces of plastic. Like, there's a serious thought in there, but it's used for the joke and not to be serious. If that makes any sense.
Another thought in that same area is there's the scene with the clown. There's the son clown and the father clown, and the son clown is hanging from a like really, really high diving board above a tiny little swimming pool, and the father clown is like beating the son clown's like hand and basically saying like, why didn't I have a daughter who was like brave,
not afraid of heights,
and not afraid of heights,
and was a lawyer and a clown
and could feed me. Like all of these other thoughts, like basically like disappointment, and the son's just like, I just want to like not die. Like, don't kill me, Dad. And it later the puzzle ends with like you launching one dude, like sticking a target on the wrong thing, and then like inflating the clown somehow, and like the dad clown, so he's like floating away with the son clown hanging on to him, and then like putting a target on his gut, and then shooting a dude out of a cannon at the clown, and then they just kind of like down, and then he goes, oh my god, did you invent that trick? And the son clown goes, well, kind of. And then he goes, oh my god, you're amazing, I love you, son. Like, little like, here is a little contained micro story that has an interesting, thought-provoking idea behind it, shown as part of a joke.
I was going to give an example with the balloon idea of a way that they could have framed it so that it was serious and not meant to just be the butt of a joke. Because the way that it is right now, they're kind of just saying, haha, look at all this helium, we're so wasteful. But if, say, helium in this world was used to, like, that's maybe a bad example, but we'll say that the brain tumor thing feeds off of helium. It's like, oh, we're just wasting it now. Or like people live on helium, so they're wasting it in these balloons. Yeah, so yeah.
Brain tumor thing?
The hand. That's mind
Oh,
reading.
Ted, the alien.
Ted,
Yeah,
yes.
like the brain slug?
Yeah.
The moving brain tuber with tentacles. I don't know. He's more of a brain octopus.
Yeah.
He's a
I don't know.
octopus. He's a octopus.
I would like to point out that the animation that you get when you're reading people's minds with the like 3-fingered hand that you can see in the image that we have in our
It tickles their brain. Yeah.
It looks kind of, it makes me uncomfortable slightly.
Makes you uncomfortable, really?
I just like, oh yeah, it's like we're just feeling up the brain here. No big deal. Kind of a violation of personal privacy.
There's a lot of violating of personal privacy in this.
Yeah.
There's one point that
lot of
actually
it.
sort of makes fun of that, because there's a character, and I'm going to spoil a side mission that I don't know if you did because it's not needed. But there's a lady in the insane asylum who's like, I'm actually an alien. I'm stuck in a human suit and I need my floaty duck to get back to outer space. And some ways
Yeah, I get
beforehand,
that.
you could pick up a inner tube duck and you give it to her and she literally floats
She goes, "Oh,
back
thanks
to
for my
space.
space floaty," and she just like flies away.
Yeah. But if you try to read her mind, she'll be like, oh, well, on my planet, you'd ask a lady before you read her thoughts.
Yeah.
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 So, yeah, weird game.
Yeah.
Weird indeed.
I've kind of said all I have to say about Stick It to the Man at this point. Yeah.
I think I learned some more based on your or topics that you brought up, Blind. So that was good. We should be able to have a bit more meta conversation almost.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I liked the game overall. Although I also hate this game. Because like the whole, I don't like platforming. This is not the game's fault. Probably this is my fault. I fucking hate platformers that require backtracking. And because this game is literally just you're in an open area and you run from one spot to the other until you figure out where all the puzzles go, it's just fucking frustrating for me. And especially one of the reasons I dislike those types of games is I'm dropping frames. One of the reasons I dislike those types of games is because they require you to go through the same encounters multiple times. This is the reason I get really irritated by games like Metroid, is because it's like, well, you have to go through the same enemy encounters multiple times, and that gets really annoying. So when you're running back and forth through the same sets of agents in the same spots every time, that combat wasn't fun the first time, and the 15th time that I have to run through because I forgot a thought down at the bottom end, or like, oh no, I know where I need to deliver this. That by design is forcing me to run through that same encounter of agents multiple times is goddamn frustrating and is just a waste of my time. So
Yeah.
there are parts of this game that I liked. I liked the writing. I liked the art style. I think the art style is fantastic. I think it played decently for the most part. The jumping was a little weird in places, a little bit floaty.
Yeah, the platforming has issues.
It could be tighter. I found myself falling into pits more often than I should, although it saves you very frequently, so it's not a huge issue.
Yeah. Oh, and the saves are literally like a photocopier printer.
Yeah, they print out
So
a new copy of
redraws
you. Which is some really weird, like, am I the original?
I guess there. I'll conclude with saying, would I recommend that you buy this game? Absolutely not. But would I recommend that you play it? Yes.
If you can get like this game's cheap as this, it's a couple of years old. Like this game's from 2013. You can get it real cheap on. So just like if you see it for a couple bucks, throw a couple bucks at you. It'll.
Yeah. I mean, I first heard about this game because Extra Credits does the games you may not have tried. And one time they're like, oh, we're teaming up with Humble Bundle and we're going to, create a whole bundle of all the games we talked about in the episode. And they talked about Stick It to the Man in that particular episode. And I picked up that bundle. And if that at all sounds familiar, you've probably already owned the game. So yeah, give it a try.
Or check your Humble Bundle.
Exactly.
A lot of people have a lot of codes sitting in their Humble Bundle. So are we concluded then, pretty much?
Yeah. I guess, yeah. I mean,
it's an hour. We good. We good.
Yeah.
If you
I didn't know if we
seen-
had any more concluding thoughts we needed to cover.
I think we've confused the viewers enough at this point.
Yeah.
I don't know. I liked it. It's weird.
It's weird. I'm weird. It's a good weird.
Yeah, it's almost better than Silver Surfer for the NES.
I just wish that I didn't spend so much time playing Silver Surfer for the NES. But now that I think about it, it's great that I spent so much time playing Silver Surfer for the NES because that game was tight. Anyway,
Silver Surfer for the NES.
thank you very much for watching Story Mode. To anybody who, if this is your first time watching, we do have like 20 something episodes of these. I recommend you start from like episode 6 because the first couple are kind of rough. You thought that this was a cringe fest. Jesus Christ, you've seen nothing.
Yeah, you see the one for Jazz Punk is this but worse.
I don't know. Jazz Punk was a fun episode. That was just us going, that was funny. That was funny.
Well, it's pretty much what we did this one, except you brought in all the morals and stuff, trying to bring it down.
Oh, I mean, I'm sorry. I didn't do enough
We're
last
just
episode.
giving you a hard time.
I had to do something. Yeah, if you're at all interested in hearing the other episodes of the show, we do have a SoundCloud. You can find us on SoundCloud at Story Mode Podcast. You can just type in Story Mode Podcast SoundCloud into Google, and you'll find us pretty quickly. I need to set up like the commands and stuff. Or if you're watching on the YouTube video, it should all be down below in the description. We might be switching to Podbean soon, so if that suddenly goes away, we'll figure out what happens at that point. Steam, we have a curator. You can like our curator, and you'll see what games we've covered within the Steam page, and that's kind of cool. Nobody follows it, so it's fine. We do have a Twitter account. You can follow us on Twitter at RealStoryMode. And if we're always looking for guests, so if you're a content creator and you want to be on the show, like maybe slip into my DMs. I need to remake that command audio. I'm sorry. Yeah, if you're watching live, we are going to do a brief after hours here today. We're just going to sit around and bitch with the chat for a little bit. For all of you guys that sat through this, oh wait, yeah, no, never mind. Definitely doesn't work. For some reason I thought that was the command popping up, but it's just anyways, I need to stop looking at the chat. Yeah, so if you're watching live, there will be I know audio, calm down. There will be a little after hours in a moment here. And if you found this somehow in the recording, I thank you. Thank you for making it through to the end. I hope you listen to the other episodes, and I hope that you enjoy it. Yeah. Do you guys have any closing thoughts? Anything you guys want to talk about or promote before we close?
If you like the podcast, go ahead and give Blind a follow, or we have a Steam curator too. That's pretty cool. Should go follow that.